In 1953, South Korea's GDP per capita was just $100, ranking among the poorest nations globally. Today, it stands as a global tech titan. This is the story of the miracle on the Han River. Yet, this transformation required a ruthless gamble. The Korean War left the peninsula in absolute ruins. Infrastructure was completely destroyed, leaving an overwhelmingly agrarian economy. There were no natural resources to exploit. How does a country with absolutely no capital and no resources even begin to build an economy from scratch? In 1961, Prime Minister Chang Mayon coined the phrase "miracle on the Han River." He drew inspiration from West Germany's post-war recovery. Yet, at this moment, the phrase was merely an aspiration. The reality was a starving nation struggling to survive the harsh winters. Traditional economic models would say foreign investment was the only path forward. But who would invest in a country with nothing to sell? The answer required a radical departure from democratic norms. The solution was not freedom, but absolute, centralized control over the nation's destiny. The fragile government could not engineer a rapid industrialization. It lacked the authority to force change. The answer required a dictator, a leader willing to sacrifice labor rights and forge a ruthless alliance with powerful family conglomerates to force an economic awakening. This was not a story of entrepreneurs freely innovating in garages. It was a calculated state-directed gamble. The state would pick the winners, providing them with massive loans and protection. In exchange, these families would execute the government's vision without question or hesitation. The stakes were unimaginably high. If this centralized gamble failed, the country would face total collapse. There was no safety net. The future of millions rested on the success of a few chosen corporations, guided by an iron fist rather than the invisible hand. A military general was about to seize power, dismantling the fragile democracy. He would bind the nation's fate to family-owned empires. Would this authoritarian gamble lift a starving population into prosperity? Or would it simply create a new class of oligarchs ruling over ruins? In 1961, a nation with a GDP per capita of just $100 faced a turning point. General Park Chung-hee seized power, abandoning the failed import substitution model for a radical gamble. Could a military dictator force an economic miracle? Park's strategy was brutally simple: export or perish. He shifted the entire economy toward foreign markets, forcing local industries to compete globally. By the early 1980s, exports skyrocketed from a mere 3% to over 30% of GDP. But how do you sell goods when your nation lacks heavy industry? You build it from scratch. In the 1970s, Park launched the heavy and chemical industry drive, pouring massive state funds into targeted, large-scale projects. The state didn't just fund these giants, it owned and fiercely protected them. State-backed behemoths like POSCO and Hyundai Heavy Industries emerged from nothing. They were not free market champions, but creatures of authoritarian design. By 1975, the combined sales of these top business groups equaled 31% of GDP. A decade later, that figure approached nearly 100%. The state was successfully building the factories, but they needed private entities to run them. But who would actually manage these sprawling industrial empires and dominate global markets? The government needed ruthless, loyal executives willing to sacrifice everything for national growth. The answer arrived in the form of family conglomerates. Enter the Chaebols. These family conglomerates were granted immense power, operating with virtually no tax burdens and suppressed wages. In 1992, Korea received a maximum rating of 100 for its favorable business environment, leaving even the United States far behind. But was this rapid industrialization truly worth the social cost? Labor rights were heavily suppressed to maintain this relentless pace. Workers endured strict conditions while the conglomerates amassed unprecedented wealth and political influence. 10 Chaebol families were responsible for 60% of the entire economic growth during this miracle period. Do you think this authoritarian bargain was necessary for survival or a tragic mistake? Share your perspective below. The state built the factories, but needed private entities to run them and dominate global markets. Enter the Chaebols. The alliance was sealed, but the true price of this miracle was yet to be paid. The word Chaebol entered the English language in 1972, but the entities it described had already seized control of South Korea's entire economic future. These weren't just corporations. They were family-controlled empires, built to industrialize a broken nation at any cost. A Chaebol was a family-owned conglomerate, spanning dozens of industries under one name: Samsung, Hyundai, LG, Daewoo. The government handpicked these families, handed them cheap loans, and shielded them from foreign competition. In return, they delivered the exports Park Chung-hee demanded. By the 1980s, just 10 Chaebol families were responsible for 60% of all economic growth during the miracle period. 10 families, 60% of an entire nation's transformation. The concentration of power was not a side effect. It was the design. In the 1970s, Park launched the heavy and chemical industry drive. Steel, shipbuilding, chemicals, electronics. State-backed giants like POSCO and Hyundai Heavy Industries rose from nothing. Combined sales of the top business groups reached 31% of GDP by 1975. What do you think was the driving force behind this rapid industrial rise? Tell us in the comments. A decade later, by 1985, those same combined sales approached nearly 100% of South Korea's GDP. The Chaebols weren't just participating in the economy. They had become the economy. Every factory, every export, every paycheck flowed through their family-controlled networks. In 1992, South Korea received a perfect rating of 100 for its favorable tax and wage environment for large businesses. The United States scored 55, Spain 71. No country on earth offered conglomerates a more generous deal than this one. But here is the question nobody asked aloud. If the Chaebols were thriving and the government was satisfied, who was paying the price for this miracle? The answer lay inside the factories, where millions of workers faced strict limits and long hours. The system was engineered to reward conglomerates at the expense of everyone else. Wages were deliberately suppressed to maintain export competitiveness. In your view, was this sacrifice necessary for national survival, or was it exploitation disguised as progress? Share your thoughts below. The Chaebols delivered results that silenced most critics. South Korea avoided recession during the 2008 global financial crisis. By the 2020, semiconductors and AI exports accounted for 40% of all exports. The gamble had produced a technological superpower from rubble. But this explosive growth came with a significant social cost. Behind every export milestone stood workers who could not quit, could not strike, and could not refuse. Their story changes everything about this miracle, but this economic miracle had a hidden price tag. Behind the soaring GDP numbers lay a harsh reality for millions of workers. The rapid growth heavily relied on labor exploitation, suppressed labor rights, and punishingly long working hours. Factory laborers faced grueling shifts, often working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for meager wages. The state actively suppressed independent labor unions, prioritizing industrial output over basic human dignity. The workers built the miracle, but were forbidden from sharing its fruits. Meanwhile, the Chaebol conglomerates grew into untouchable titans. By 1985, the top business groups controlled nearly 100% of the nation's GDP. This immense concentration of wealth sparked rising criticism, as their dominance actively inhibited small businesses and stifled organic entrepreneurship. Was this relentless concentration of power truly necessary for national survival? The system bred deep crony capitalism, where government favors guaranteed corporate success. As the conglomerates expanded, the gap between the ruling elite and the average citizen widened, creating severe economic inequality. The tax environment heavily favored these massive corporations. In 1992, Korea received a maximum rating for its favorable tax burdens and low wage rates, far surpassing Western nations. This system was designed to protect the Chaebols at any cost, leaving ordinary taxpayers behind. If you're fascinated by how nations engineer rapid economic growth, consider subscribing for more historical deep dives. Our next episode explores the Japanese post-war miracle that inspired this very blueprint. Economists still fiercely debate the origins of this success. Did authoritarian intervention truly cause the rapid industrialization? Or was it the later market liberalization that unlocked real growth? The historical debate remains unresolved, dividing scholars into two fiercely opposed ideological camps. Some argue that without the iron-fisted direction of Park Chung-hee, the massive shipyards and steel mills would never exist. They claim the state's heavy hand was the only way to mobilize a shattered agrarian society into a modern industrial powerhouse. Conversely, critics maintain that early state intervention created massive inefficiencies and corrupted the free market. They insist that Korea only truly flourished when the government finally stepped back. This allowed global competition to force the Chaebols to innovate and become globally competitive tech titans. Yet, despite these deep structural flaws and severe social costs, the model somehow survived the ultimate stress test. When the 2008 global financial collapse threatened to destroy economies worldwide, this controversial system faced its most dangerous hour. In 2008, the global financial system collapsed. Banks failed, economies shattered, but South Korea stood firm. While the world spiraled into recession, Korea's economy kept growing. The reason wasn't luck. It was discipline, years of low state debt and massive fiscal reserves built during the boom years. But how did a nation once poorer than the poorest African countries build such reserves? The answer lies in a relentless strategy. Decades of export-driven growth, suppressed wages, and state-directed investment had filled the national treasury. This disciplined approach ensured their economic survival. Now, Korea bet everything on the future. By the 2020s, it was spending nearly 5% of its GDP on research and development, one of the highest rates on Earth. This wasn't incremental improvement. This was a deliberate state-backed gamble on semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and next-generation technologies. The gamble paid off. Semiconductors and AI-related products now account for 40% of all Korean exports. The ratio of exports to GDP stands at 46%. Korea didn't just join the global tech race. It positioned itself at the very center of the world's digital nervous system. But this technological dominance was decades in the making. In 1988, Seoul hosted the Summer Olympics. It was a declaration to the world. Korea was no longer a war-torn aid recipient. It was a modern industrial power. The opening ceremony showcased thousands of years of culture to a global audience. If you're fascinated by stories of transformation like this, subscribe for more deep dives into hidden histories. 14 years later, Korea co-hosted the 2002 FIFA World Cup. The streets exploded with red shirts and national pride. Millions of fans filled stadiums and plazas across Seoul. The world watched a nation that had once been invisible now commanding global attention on its own terms. In 2010, South Korea achieved another milestone. It became the first non-G8 nation to host a G20 summit. World leaders gathered in Seoul, discussing the future of the global economy. Korea was no longer at the table. It was setting the table. The transformation from poverty to power was complete. By 2025, South Korea's nominal GDP reached $1.87 trillion. It ranked as the fourth largest economy in Asia and the 13th largest in the world. From a GDP per capita of roughly $100 in 1953 to a technological superpower. The numbers tell an impossible story, but behind every miracle lies a price. The Chaebol families that drove 60% of Korea's growth still dominate the economy. Samsung, Hyundai, LG, SK. They built the nation, but concentrated wealth and suppressed wages. To understand how nations rise and fall, consider subscribing for the next chapter. Yet, as South Korea stands at the pinnacle of global technology, the engine of its miracle becomes a vulnerability. The Chaebol system, the demographic crisis, the geopolitical pressures. Korea conquered poverty, but can it survive its own success? By the 2020, semiconductors accounted for 40% of South Korea's total exports. But a new shadow loomed over the Han River. China's manufacturing sector was rapidly ascending, directly threatening the very export markets that had fueled Korea's miraculous rise. But external competition was not the only threat. South Korea faced a profound internal crisis. Its birth rate had plummeted to the lowest in the developed world. A rapidly aging population threatened to hollow out the future workforce that built this economic empire. Could a nation survive when its greatest generation ages out of the workforce? The overconcentration in technology created a dangerous vulnerability. If the semiconductor market stumbled, the entire South Korean economy would tremble under the immense weight of its own success. The very strategy that saved South Korea now boxed it in. The Chaebols, once the engines of growth, had become untouchable giants. The ruthless gamble that sacrificed labor rights for rapid industrialization had left a legacy of deep inequality and immense systemic risk. Yet, the sheer scale of this achievement cannot be denied. In just one generation, a war-torn agrarian nation transformed into a global tech titan. From a GDP per capita of $100, it now boasts a nearly $2 trillion economy. The miracle on the Han River was not born from free markets. It was forged in the fires of authoritarian rule and corporate ambition. It was a high-stakes gamble where human rights were traded for national survival and eventual prosperity. The world watched in awe as South Korea hosted the 1988 Olympics and the 2002 World Cup. These events were not just sporting spectacles. They were powerful declarations that a once impoverished nation had finally arrived on the global stage. But miracles, by definition, are fragile things. The institutions built to survive extreme poverty are not always suited for managing extreme wealth. The structural flaws of the past now echo loudly into the present, demanding a new vision for survival. The miracle was built in a single generation, but the next generation will determine if it survives. The looming demographic collapse and the relentless rise of China threaten to erase decades of progress. Will the Korean tiger adapt, or will it falter? South Korea's story is a testament to the brutal cost of rapid development. It proves that a nation can engineer its own salvation, but never without a heavy price. The legacy of the Han River is written in both triumph and sacrifice. The story of South Korea remains a complex tapestry of ambition, sacrifice, and survival. It shows the dual nature of progress. Our next video explores how another nation gambled everything on a single resource, only to face total economic collapse.